All right. So, my guest here is the other half of the Northwestern Voices podcast, Caleb Hahn. And the subject today is the podcast itself.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's called Northwestern Voices,
it's called
and
Northwestern
it's
Voices.
extremely successful. We have a
Yeah.
beautiful host.
Absolutely. Yeah. The term Adonis comes to mind.
I don't know what
Yeah.
that means, but it does
Yeah.
come to mind. It's
Yeah.
just like a word
Sort of
coming
the
out of.
Greek ideal of beauty, strength,
That's kind
and
of what my subconscious was telling me what that word meant.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You kind of you spend any amount of time around me, and that's sort of like it bubbles up,
Mm-hmm.
from the subconscious recesses of your
Yeah.
mind. Yeah. So we have now recorded over 50 episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and
Happy anniversary, by the way.
happy happy anniversary. It's been a lot of fun. So Caleb, like, what are some of the things that you've learned, from doing this now for over a year about podcasts or about filming podcasts?
I've learned that what was it? Oh, I don't know. Some pop star said lighting is everything, and I could not be more of a fan of that now.
Yeah.
A year ago, we had these ugly overhead lights going, and it just made everyone look terrible,
Yeah.
including me, which is easy to do. But you like to have like these. My grandfather gifted me these nice lights that we're using right now, and
Yeah.
I adore them. They're so great.
Yeah.
You want a soundboard for sure. You want as much control over the mics as possible. The most difficult thing for me is lining up the shot because cameras are expensive. We don't have two, so we haven't been toggling between the two. And it would be very cool to get a set someday. It'd be cool to get like some sound dampening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about like instructions to the host or guests or anything about things that they should do to improve or enhance the quality of the podcast?
I think the thing that I remember telling you that I think I still agree with,
Yeah, aside from lose weight, but
besides that, because I tell you every week and it
Yeah, I
just
know.
hasn't. No, it's that like the less you're looking at your notes, the better.
Yeah.
Essentially, like the more natural the conversation, I think the
Right.
better it is.
Yeah.
And if you have like a moment where you're looking at your notes, I feel like that just it doesn't flow quite as well.
Right.
I'm sorry, I keep
Yeah.
on bumping this, but
Yeah.
what you really want and what I think this podcast has really thrived when we pursue it is like a natural conversation where the guest gets to just talk about things. And I think on like a more technical side, we've been making it more about like one subject instead of multiple things. And I think that's really helpful for people like when they click on a video, they know like what they're going to hear about for the most part.
Yeah, I agree with that too. Sometimes I think early on we got into discussions of people who have, a lot of sides to them. And like, well, even just like with the Mark Harmon episodes where we talked sort of about general things about Mark Harmon, we brought him back and just did ice fishing.
Yeah.
I thought that was really useful, to have it more focused on just that one topic on that second one. And I kind of wish I could think of some of them more. I wish we could have gone back and maybe just devoted an entire episode to just one of the things that they were interested in. But
One thing, I apologize if you've been asked this before, maybe on the episode where you were interviewed a few episodes ago, but like this was mostly driven by you coming to the area and making lots of friends, right? Do you find that Jordan Peterson, I like him a lot. I don't care if it's embarrassing. He talks about how the more you get to talk with people, the more interesting they become.
right.
And I sort of had this thought where, like, I feel like ideologically, people are very boring, but personally, people are very interesting. Do you find that to be the case?
I do, yeah. I mean, I guess I've always been sort of, a people person or being fascinated by people, and especially like what makes them tick. What makes them, why they are the way they are. Why are they good at this? What about their personality, or their upbringing, or their education has caused them to be, knowledgeable or skillful about a particular subject, but you're never going to get that just from reading somebody's bio or their resume or something like that, because like let's face it, a lot of those are all very similar. you know,
Yeah.
because there's the way that we present ourselves outward facing to the public is different than the way that we are after having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of why I like having more of the longer conversations. I know we're not doing like true long form conversations that last 3 hours plus.
Someday, hopefully. I'm hoping to go for that eventually.
Yeah, it would be nice, but I mean, at least for now, we're usually going over an hour, which I think is a sufficient time to at least get a taste of what a person is like.
Yeah, there's nothing I hate more than like a 15-minute long interview.
But it is interesting, and I always, one of the things I do like to get into is sort of some of the fundamentals of things, the basic building blocks of people's knowledge, experience, you know, that kind of that they use to eventually, you know, create bigger and better things or more focused things. Trying to discover what are some of the commonalities to successful people, I mean, in this area, let's just say, you know, for now, like what are some of the basic character traits or some of the basic items of knowledge that most people seem to have in this area that makes them a successful person in this area. I think that's useful to
Yeah,
people.
why do you do what you do, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or what's your approach towards life? What's your approach towards work? What's your approach towards creativity? You know, all of those things.
I feel like I think for the most part, everyone thinks they have something of value to add to the world. And I think,
I mean, you're sad if they didn't.
yeah, well, I mean, like, I think lots of people maybe don't get that opportunity as much, like, especially as you get older. If you're living sort of by yourself, you don't have, like,
Yeah.
I think this has been very useful as a platform to talk to people like, I don't know, like Paul Dove, or some people like Mark Harmon, who like clearly spend a lot of time thinking about things, but maybe they don't have a way to say it to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think further to that, one of I think the uses of this podcast is to kind of preserve, in a sense, you know, what someone was like in the way that they thought for posterity. I mean,
Well, we
you know,
experienced that with Joel.
I think of that with Joel Maxwell. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
how Joel was a beautiful guy, and well, I mean, if we didn't do this, right, there's a possibility that Joel maybe would never have had, his kids never would have had the opportunity to learn anything about him, or, you know, at least just have a something where you know, I can hear Dad talk about making a canoe, or
Yeah.
you know, whatever the case may be there. So
That was really special for me too, like getting to know some of these people. And I think about this a lot too. Like, I think everyone should be writing at least a little bit, so that like when you pass on, you still have, like, people can still learn more about you. And I think this podcast was very helpful for.
Exactly. Yeah. Or, you know, like, yeah, it's just, it could be useful for, you know, not only when people die, but, you know, I mean, I think just even as, you know, somebody who had known the person in the past or something and finds it on Facebook or finds it on the internet somewhere and says, oh, I'd like to, you know, see what this person's up to, or, yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of different good uses for it, that people might have, and you know, that's definitely, but one of them I think is definitely to kind of preserve, or, you know, put, you know, take a snapshot of what was going on in the person's life, you know, at the time that they were recorded.
Not to stay on the topic too much of like preserving it even past you when you've died, but I was at a funeral and their journal was being read, and I just had this thought of like their family is going to be able to learn so much about them that like they didn't even know after they're gone, and they're not even able to like share more about themselves. And I think that's so special. Like, I'd really like to have something of yours that like I could read. This is going down a dark path, I feel like. It's, you know, it's special. I think everyone's special. I do.
Yeah.
I see this sentiment a lot, like, on Twitter, that like you're not as important as you think you are. But I think you are exactly as important as you make yourself out to be, and I think everyone's special, and we all have like things worth saying. So
everyone is important. I mean, there's
I agree with
no
that.
doubt about that.
Absolutely.
I mean, in the sense that everyone has value, you know. I also think that everyone in, you know, that you're going to come across is going to be expert in at least one thing.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a really interesting way of looking at the world.
Yeah.
I'm glad you had that perspective.
Yeah, and it's not always going to be the same thing, and maybe some people are going to be expert in things that, you know, maybe aren't particularly you know, of general interest, but you know, you're going to come across somebody who knows, you know, the best way to stack pallets of you know, boxes or something like that.
Yeah.
They're expert in that, right? And they've done it for years, and
They're
know all
better
the
than
little
everyone else, and they
tricks,
can tell you how to do it right.
they can tell you how to do it right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, in that sense, you could really bring anybody on, and as long as you could get to the point of what are they expert in, and then how can you kind of get that information out, you know, as the interviewer is kind of one of the goals of you know, what I'm trying to do here with this, or what we're trying to do here with this. So,
And I think I don't think lots of the people who are watching this are terminally online like I am.
Right.
There's a lot of like IQ discourse, like how intelligent is this person? Like, oh no, you're an idiot. Like you're a 60 IQ individual. That
don't you
kind of
see?
thing.
There's so much of that
Yeah.
on social media that, like, okay, if a person disagrees with me, then they're just a fool or an idiot.
And I just think
Yeah.
that's such like a harmful perspective, even
Yeah.
like just looking at humanity, because I think intelligence doesn't really matter, to be honest. Like you are a lot of like what you read and like what you know, and I think everyone has something. Even people who like don't interact with anyone have like value to add to the world, and like you like assume that they know something that you don't, which is not like my personal thought, but
yeah, you have to make that assumption, I think. And well, I mean, just further what you're saying is, you know, further to what you're saying about, you know, calling people dumb or idiots or stupid or whatever. I can't recall, I mean, a time where I thought of somebody who has said that about someone else and thinking to myself, well, gee, you know, that's right. You know, that person really is. And I think it reflects more on the person who said it, you know, than anything. I mean, you can criticize somebody's position or argument, and you could say, I think that's a you know, incredibly bad argument, or I think it's a stupid, or you can even go ahead and say it's an idiotic argument. But just when you get into the personal attacks and how everything is so personal now, I think now we've crossed over from the point of, you know, vehemently disagreeing, but with a common understanding, to the point of being divisive and everything now. And I think that divisiveness is ultimately the fruit of that is going to be some kind of violence. You know, I mean, I think it's you divide people enough, put them on different sides of issues, dehumanizing the other person, you know, referring to them as idiots or whatever. It starts there, but it goes beyond that, because if you can actually start to dehumanize another person, then if they're not a human being, then it's far easier to you know, cross that line into violence. I mean, you think about like the Civil War.
yeah.
Wasn't that long ago? You know, Americans killing other Americans. How could it have gotten that bad? You know, where...
Well, if you look at a lot of the accounts, they didn't even like take it personally, really. Like you had nights where like the North and South would hang out, but there was some element of that though, where like
sure.
Yeah. But it's important to remember that people aren't like the sum of their ideologies. They're a lot more than that.
Right.
You know, I'm a Christian, probably would be considered like typically right wing, but like I don't feel like that describes me as a person.
Yeah, you're much more nuanced than that, I think, right?
Yeah, and hopefully that's the case for everyone.
Yeah,
And if they don't feel like they're very nuanced, like I don't know. It's hard, especially in like an election season, to see everyone making everything about an election, and it's like that's like very little of the value you have, I feel like.
Yeah, and
your politics.
You know, honestly, like when it comes to the election and stuff like that, I get to a certain point where I'm there now, where I am just oversaturated with that, and I just try to tune it out. as much as I possibly can.
It's very healthy. Yeah.
I've made up my mind a long time ago who I'm going to vote for. I don't need to learn anything more about either candidate. And so everything else is just kind of going to happen. But it's interesting too what you say about the personality being sort of the sum of the ideology. And I think a lot of the discourse that's going on now really has to do with this whole idea of power. The postmodern discourse is that really all there is power.
If you're a high value person, you have a lot of power,
Yeah,
whether that's like physical power or
right.
like, authority over people.
It's just like a struggle between those who have power and those who do not have power. And so when they're gonna generalize you, here you said, I'm a Christian, obviously you're a white male. I'm right wing, right? So when a person who is so obsessed with this concept, this postmodern concept of there is no truth, there's only power, what they see of you is a person who potentially or even is realistically has more power than I, if I disagree with you. And so there you are, something to be overcome, so that I can take the power that you have and shift that balance to put forth the things that I want to put forth. So I feel like a lot of this sort of reduction of people to their ideologies and even their physical characteristics and stuff like that really comes from this postmodern idea that everything is really all just sort of like reduces down to power. You can be assigned a number. I have another number, and my job is to struggle with you to try to take away from your number and add to mine.
Sure.
But
I feel like I saw this thing once that was talking about how one of the most valuable things you can like use to like know about someone's character is like watch how they treat like a service worker or like a waitress or something. And I think that's so valuable. Like, at the end of the day, well, for one, power is actually influence. And I feel like influence is a lot more important. And influence comes from a lot of things. It comes from being like a good speaker. It comes from being like very nice to people. And I think like, honestly, not a lot matters as long as you're treating people really well and you're being selfless and you have love towards other people. So that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah. So, Caleb, which guests in particular stand out to you as those that were particularly interesting? I mean, I thought they were all pretty good. But what would you like to see in terms of guests in the future?
I really liked having Denise Jockla on. That was a lot of fun. I really liked her talking about cooking, traveling, and dancing. All of those were very cool things. And I don't know, something about like all of those interests sort of like culminated in one person. I found that really interesting, and I was like, I don't know, cooking is really interesting to me, and dancing a little bit, although I'm not
dancing.
A little bit.
Okay.
It's just an interesting art form, like you don't see like dancing shows really anymore.
Right.
But I think it'd be interesting if we started seeing, not like in an inappropriate way, but I really
liked Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers, that kind of thing, or you have no idea what I'm talking about.
Like I'm not that into dancing. Okay.
Okay.
No, I really liked hers. I liked Mark Harmon's. There are those episodes that you talk about. Who's the city administrator, county administrator?
Jeff Cadwell.
Yeah, there are a couple guests where you definitely talk more about like ideas, which I guess I find helpful. And even if I disagree with them, like the episode you did with Paul and John a few months ago.
Yeah.
There are some of those.
That was a pretty good one.
Yeah. And I've even heard from like another person like that was his favorite because you were talking a lot more about Christianity. Sometimes I can't stand listening to what people have to say. Like I'm not very Calvinist at all.
Right.
But I still think that's like a valuable thing to talk about.
And then like what kind of guests do you think would be good to, if we could have more of like this kind of guest or more of that kind of guest in the future, what would you be, filling those blanks in with?
I think, well, we had talked about sort of a switch in format, which I think the audience should really be weighing in here. Like, if they have people that they know that would be really good as guests, or people who are experts in their field, but I'm always really interested in someone who's really good at what they're doing. And I think even were we to start taking the podcast to places like a kitchen where we were learning more like in depth, like things about food, or I don't know, it's hard to describe. I have my interests. Like, my interests are sort of filmmaking and editing and those kinds of things. But if you get someone who's really good at one thing, I think that's always going to be a good episode.
Okay. So expertise.
Yeah.
Yeah, in one area. Yeah. I think for me, the way I'd answer that, I absolutely agree with that. I'd love to see more people who are expert in particular subjects or fields or skills, or
especially like art subjects to me.
Yeah.
Like, we're gonna have a painter in soon, right?
Yeah, I think next week.
Okay.
Yeah. One that really stuck out in my mind that I really enjoyed and felt like we had a good conversation with was Will Weaver, author Will Weaver.
Oh yeah, that was a good conversation.
Yeah, because I think
he has such a great voice too.
Yeah,
and the way he
does.
intonates.
He presents that, but I mean, obviously, anybody who's writing books is you could think about as somebody who, I don't want to say intellectual, but somebody who's
introspective,
thinking about ideas and things like that, and then how he starts with abstract ideas or even just ideas of a story, and then puts that into writing in that process. I think those are I really enjoy that kind of discussion.
Will Weaver's is really good.
And
I have to give a temporary, I don't know why I said temporary, I have to give a shout out to my dad because he came out on the podcast.
Yes,
that was cool. I think we should be interviewing more pastors, because we've got a lot of churches for one town.
That is true, yeah. We've got probably, 10 churches around here?
2 Lutheran churches, a Pentecostal, a Baptist, Faith is non-denominational now. Eastside is sort of in the area. We've got Vineyard. We used to have a Nazarene church, but not anymore. We stole them.
Well, wasn't there, there's a United Church of Christ, too, I think, on Main Street.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they've got like a cool little church with a steeple.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, it's right. No, I'm kind of like by where you're. Up Main Street, north, kind of on your way up to Senex. There's across the street there on the left hand side. There's a church there. Yeah.
Well, of course we got the Catholic Church, and then we got Seventh Day Adventist. That was
Seventh Day Adventist.
Yeah, the pastor of that church. Well, is he still in the area?
I'm not sure.
Shoot.
Yeah.
He was really cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, I think that would be great. I do enjoy theological discussions,
Yeah, Robin Fish when he came on, that was a really good
interview. Robin Fish too. Yeah. I think with those is that it's as long as everybody has certain basic assumptions about I don't want to say basic assumptions, but like that the Bible is in some way authoritative. I know that most people...
When you're talking with a Christian, you should hope that they kind of like...
You would, yeah,
they
right.
fall under that category.
If it's going to be a discussion of Christian theology, you would think that that somebody would have to say that the Bible is somewhat authoritative. Maybe not. Because I know there's a lot of denominations that think... and there's the 2 Methodist churches too, which we didn't mention, but... or did we? I don't know.
Maybe.
But that maybe that it's not inerrant, or that it's not completely infallible. The Bible. But as long as you can resort to scriptures being authoritative, then you have sort of basically a rule book, that would govern disputes. And so you'd say, okay, well, let's bring up this particular topic. What does the Bible say about that? And if it's a question of interpretation, you know, whether it's like, if you know, like for instance, like we use the KJV at our church, but you know another church is using a different, so you have that kind of discussion about interpretation, but also just like what does it mean when it says this? That could be an interesting theological discussion. But I think you kind of get far afield when you have some people just saying, well, I mean, the answer to this question is not found in the Bible, or you could not resort to the Bible to find an answer to this question. Now you're not really having a theological discussion, but you're having more of a political discussion. And you know, I'm less interested in that.
Really?
know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like even when we had like the Republican and Democrat in, which I think we should start having like debate episodes, or at least like
That'd be fun too. Yeah.
conversations where two people with like opposing ideas are sort of like in the same room with each other. But I thought that idea was so great, which is that like you're just asking them the same questions about what they believe, and you can sort of compare the two.
Yeah.
And that was like,
It was fair, I thought.
yeah,
You know.
I found myself enjoying both of the perspectives present.
Yeah, and I think debates would be great. It's hard, I think, to find two people on the opposite ends of the spectrum who are willing to put in the effort to defend their position, because
Yeah.
it takes effort. You know,
You gotta
and
find
it's
someone
a
who's, like,
cop-out if you say
comfortable,
that.
sort
Yeah,
of.
if somebody's. I was just listening to what is the guy's name? Graham something. He's the guy that did the ancient apocalypse show on Netflix, and he just recently was interviewed on both Rogan and Lex Friedman.
Okay.
And he apparently debated an archaeologist, or you know, more of a traditional archaeologist, you know, because he's got this. He's a big proponent of this younger dries theory, and he believes that there was an ancient civilization that you know predated what we commonly think of as being sort of the dawn of modern civilization. Something
Built
like
the pyramids.
that this civilization had built the pyramids,
Sure.
and all this other stuff, and
All right.
you know, and then you know the establishment archaeologists all think that it's just nonsense. So then they agreed to like a debate or something like that, and it sounded to me, I didn't watch the debate, but it sounded to me like the other guy won, and the Graham Hancock, I think is his name, or I think it's Graham Hancock. Anyway, he said, well, you know, the problem was that I just wasn't prepared enough for it. You know, and this guy knows his subject like, I mean, if there's one thing he knows, it's his pet subject. And, you know, when he was debating with somebody, he felt that he wasn't adequately prepared for it. And maybe it was just the idea that you have to defend the position and you have to be prepared by studying the other side's position.
Yeah, and I know I just went on a rant against like ideology, but to be like a very intellectual person, I feel like you have to be able to think of counter arguments yourself. And you have to be able to address those. Like you shouldn't have to, like you should be studying the other side. You shouldn't just like have your own little worldview and then
Myopic.
like, shield it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's how you do anything. I mean, that's what you do in legal writing, you know, typically, is that if you're going to submit the first paper, you know, the first appeal or the first brief or something like that somebody's going to have to respond to, you put forth your affirmative position first, but then you start raising, you know, it might be said that this, or it might be said that. You have basically make the argument for the other side, and then refute it preemptively. You know,
and to quote Jordan Peterson again, if you have an idea, you have to attack it with everything you can, so that you know that it's like it's actually solid. Because if you don't do that, then like it's probably not a very stable idea. You don't know if it's true or not.
Subject to doubt, you know, or subject to attack. Then you know, why are you holding on to something that you don't believe? You know, it's a form of self. Deception.
It's insecurity for sure.
Yeah.
What's like do you have like a very specific debate? I don't know if you listen like Christian versus atheist beliefs. Or do you have any debate that you think went like super well that was executed very well?
You mean like for one side but not the other, or something like that? Or?
No. Where like you listened to the debate and you felt like both sides conducted themselves very well and they like presented arguments and they clearly like understood each other.
I can't think of one offhand, but there had been some debates that involved James White. Do you know who James White is?
I think I've heard of him.
There was a lot of these. He engaged in a lot of these Calvinist versus Arminian debates,
Okay.
and he took the Calvinist position. And I can't. I mean, there's several times where I remember him debating an Arminian, and coming away from it thinking that both of these guys know their stuff. And
Okay.
I mean it's one thing about the Bible is that it doesn't reveal which of those two sides is right, although logically speaking, one of them has to be right. One of them has to be wrong, one of them has to be right. So, it's if they can kind of fight each other to a stalemate, then I think you could say that both sides did a good job, or at least both sides did an even job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that I feel like that's the environment you have to pursue with two people that like know their stuff but are also happy to listen. I feel like interruptions don't get too far.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing about debates is that you gotta cut the mic off if the person's talking too much.
Yeah,
I mean there's.
I feel like if you find yourself like getting angry or your like heart rate is rising when you're having an argument, that's that's when you need to stop because like that's when you're gonna stop.
You're gonna lose
coherent.
control. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if anybody has any ideas for things that they would like to see debated around here, I mean, I know like, the pipeline that came through a couple years ago probably would have been a good topic to debate for, on a local subject.
Yeah.
But
how'd that all go, by the way? Is that all really resolved now?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think that Enbridge got their pipeline through, and that was the end of the story. I think all the appeals are exhausted, and that's what happened.
Well, good for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and good for their shareholders too, I suppose, right? But maybe not so good for the water. I mean, who knows
Probably
what the
not,
debate the if there will be any environmental disaster, because I think that was what they were predicting, that it was gonna hurt the groundwater. But
well, hopefully not.
I haven't heard anything on that score recently, but yeah. So if anybody can think of if there's people who want to debate things, and we'd certainly put in the comments or whatever you want to talk about. If there's something that you think we ought to be highlighting on this, we'd love to do it.
But you would never want to do a debate, right? Like you could be. Well, I'm speaking for you, but you want to remain like semi.
Well, I don't really think there's anything that I could really. I mean, aside from like say like a theological debate of some kind, that. I'd rather stay neutral in all this too.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Being the host of the show and all that, I don't really want to, reveal exactly what my true beliefs are.
You want the power of ambiguity.
Yeah. So, but what other things do you think that we could do to improve the quality of the show?
I think as we get more and more people who are like experts, we should be sitting down with them longer. Someone who really knows their stuff. Let's pick a subject. Let's say, I don't know, we just did one on ice fishing. Let's say someone's really intelligent about, boy, I'm coming up with like nothing here. Nothing interesting, but painting.
Yeah.
You get someone in who can like, with an easel. I think more hands-on stuff.
Demonstrations and things like that.
Yeah.
Kind of like I think what we're going to do with the actors in a couple of weeks here. So.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about that kind of thing. Just like more of a flexible environment.
Yeah, and I mean, and it makes sense given that we've, been using your very professional camera. It kind of almost seems like we're not really using it to its fullest capabilities by kind of having it in a controlled environment like this.
Not to its fullest capabilities, no.
Yeah.
We'd have to shoot like an action scene in the podcast for us to use it for its like fullest capabilities.
Yeah, its highest best purpose.
Yeah, maybe we should shoot like a short film with these actors.
Yeah.
And then do the podcast, like we play the short film and then do the podcast afterwards.
It's just I think the only limitation is your imagination. Yeah. So.
Exactly. Do you have any like desire to get back into acting at all? Like, would you be very happy?
Yeah.
Would you be very happy if like someone constructed a script and asked you to come in for it?
I just don't know if acting is my thing. I mean, I enjoyed doing it, but it's I just don't know if I have that skill or that even just the ability to do it. I think I understand it sort of, or I have a sort of a conceptual understanding of it, but to execute it is tough. Plus, I think if you want to be an actor, you really, I mean, it sounds shallow, but I think you really want to focus on being much more photogenic than I am, especially if you're doing film.
I don't think so. I don't think so. Willem Dafoe's pretty popular.
Yeah, but he has a unique look. So I mean, I guess I'm not I'm not out there, thinking about when's the next time I'm going to be on a movie or something. I just don't really have any desire, to get back in that. But I should ask you, do you have any plans in the works to make a movie?
I do, but I don't have like a schedule. I have a short film that I shot with some friends that I'm pretty proud of. I have it mostly edited. I've run into a couple issues, but there's always the biggest problem you run into as, I guess, more on the producer side than the director side is scheduling conflicts. Because when everyone has a work schedule,
big time, yeah,
it's so impossible. And that was kind of what stopped me with the last one. Was just like, I can't get anyone together for this.
It's so hard to get that many people all together on the same page at once without paying them. And that's the key to it. Like, you can make a movie. Yeah, okay, if you pay everyone, then they feel like a sense of obligation to be there. Yeah. But I mean, obviously we're not dealing with big budgets here or anything like that. But if you say, okay, you're going to get a per diem or something, you got some you get a grant, or you get, some form of financial aspect to it. You'll find it's a lot easier to get people together.
And I tried to break into that aspect for a couple of years, and I don't think I did a very good job of it. But it's definitely something like I see myself as, videography, wedding videography is like ideally what I do for like money. But then with the extra time I have and with the spare money, then I would actually be able to like do these projects, because like I'm pretty tight right now in terms of scheduling, and it'd be pretty hard to shoot like a full-length movie if I had like some extra cash.
Hey, yeah.
Some extra cash and a more flexible schedule, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, that's everybody, right? Everybody wishes they had more cash and therefore more time to do the things that they really want to do. But that's life,
Yeah.
That is life. So, well, Caleb, thanks for being part of this podcast and doing such a great job with filming and being 50% of the podcast. And
I think you've done a fantastic job. I've never gone back and rewatched the first episode. But I feel like we'd see like a huge difference both in the production and like the interviewing style.
I think we would too. Yeah. So I think we both kind of grown in this space, and let's keep going.
Yeah, guys, like and subscribe.
Yes.
Like and subscribe
and comment.
To Northwestern
if
Voices.
if you have any input on any of this stuff, please
absolutely
comment. Yeah.
We're not out of ideas, but the more we have, the better. So
right. All right. Thanks, Caleb.